He dismissed a boy in need. By sunrise, everything he loved was gone. It was supposed to be a quick stop, just another day, another deal. But outside the mirrored gates of his glass office, a barefoot boy stood, clutching a crumpled letter in trembling hands. "Please, sir, it's for my mother," the child whispered, voice barely rising above the city's hum. He didn't even look down. Just laughed, the kind of cold, dismissive laugh that says, "You're not my problem." But that night, the phone rang. Then another. Then the police knocked. By sunrise, his empire had crumbled. But what shattered him wasn't the money. It was the note he refused to read. Have you ever walked past someone in need, only to later wonder if that moment could have changed everything? If you believe in unseen consequences and quiet justice, this story is for you. Welcome to Mr. Nuel Stories, where the smallest choices carry the heaviest truths. Like this video if you know every act of kindness counts. Comment with "I won't walk past again" if this touched you. Subscribe, because each day brings a new story that just might change the way you see the world. Some men are born to wealth. Others are born to want. Newell Ashford was the second kind. At 46, he commanded rooms before he even entered them. His name was whispered in boardrooms, feared in courthouses, envied at country clubs. Ashford Holdings had carved half the city's skyline into glass and steel monuments to his ambition. But monuments, Newell had learned, were built on foundations most people never saw. His foundation was a simple rule: never let anyone see you bleed. He'd learned it young, in a rusted trailer outside Tulsa, where the air tasted like dust and broken dreams. Where his mother, Sarah, worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on, cleaning offices before dawn, serving lunch at the diner, stocking shelves until midnight. Where his father would disappear for days, sometimes weeks, leaving behind nothing but empty bottles and emptier promises. "You're gonna be different," his mother would whisper, her hands raw from scrubbing other people's floors. "You're gonna make something of yourself." And he had. God, how he had. The penthouse where Newell now lived overlooked the river, 40 floors above the city that had once looked down on him. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view that real estate magazines called breathtaking. Italian marble floors. Custom furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Art that appreciated faster than most people's salaries. His wife, Leanne, moved through their home like she'd been born to it. Blonde hair that caught the light just right. A smile that graced charity galas and business dinners. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, because she had, twice, for lifestyle features about power couples who give back. Their daughter, Maris, was 16 now. Private school, violin lessons, summer camps in Switzerland. She had her mother's grace and her father. Sharp mind. Teachers called her exceptional. College recruiters were already circling. Perfect family. Perfect life. Perfect image. But perfection, Newell knew, was a performance. And he'd been performing for so long, he sometimes forgot what was real. In the boardroom, Newell was surgical. He could spot weakness in a contract from across the table, smell desperation on a seller before they even sat down. His acquisitions team called him the surgeon, not because he was gentle, but because he cut deep and clean, removing what he wanted while leaving the rest to heal or die on its own. Business isn't personal, he'd tell young executives. The moment you make it personal, you lose. It was a lesson he'd applied to everything. The elderly tenants he'd evicted to convert apartments into luxury condos? Not personal. Just market forces. The small businesses he'd bought out and demolished for shopping centers? Not personal. Just progress. The neighborhoods he'd gentrified, pushing out families who'd lived there for generations? Not personal. Just economics. Newell Ashford had built an empire by never looking back, never looking down, never letting sentiment slow his climb. He was respected. Feared. Envied. But not loved. Not really. Love, after all, was personal. And Newell Ashford had long ago decided he couldn't afford personal. Even at home, in the quiet moments between deals, Newell felt the distance. Leanne's kisses were perfect, camera-ready, charity gala appropriate. Maris hugged him goodbye each morning, but her eyes were always checking her phone, her mind already at school with friends whose names he struggled to remember. They loved the idea of him. The provider. The success story. The man who'd lifted them all above the ordinary. But did they love him? Late at night, when the city glittered below and the silence pressed in from all sides, Newell sometimes wondered if he'd traded his soul for his skyline. But morning always came, and with it, new deals to close, new empires to build, new heights to climb. After all, he'd learned the rule young: never let anyone see you bleed. Even if the bleeding never stopped. Thursday, June 15th. The kind of day that felt like it would stretch forever. The air hung thick and heavy, promising rain that wouldn't come. The city sweated under a brass-colored sky, and everyone moved a little slower, breathed a little harder. Newell was late for a meeting with Japanese investors, the kind of deal that could add another tower to his collection, another floor to his empire. His phone buzzed with reminders, his assistant's voice crackling through the speaker. "They're here early, Mr. Ashford. They're waiting." His driver navigated through downtown traffic with practiced efficiency, but every red light felt like a judgment. Newell's mind was already in the conference room, calculating margins, anticipating objections, preparing his perfect smile. He barely noticed when the car pulled up to the Ashford Holdings building. Glass and steel reaching toward the clouds. His name etched in silver letters across the entrance. Security guards who nodded with military precision. A lobby that echoed with the sound of success. But outside the mirrored gates, something small and desperate waited. The boy couldn't have been more than 9. Maybe 10. Small for his age, with knobby knees and elbows that jutted out like bird bones. His hair was matted to his forehead with sweat and grime. His feet were bare, soles black with city dirt. He clutched a letter so tightly it had begun to tear at the edges. Newell saw him as he stepped out of the car, a flash of movement in his peripheral vision, easily dismissed. Street kids were common enough downtown. The city was full of them, drawn to business districts like moths to flame, hoping for loose change or leftover lunch. "Please, sir." The voice was small, barely audible above the city's constant hum. Traffic and construction and 1,000 conversations blending into urban white noise. "Please, sir, it's for my mother." Newell paused, one foot on the sidewalk, briefcase in hand. The boy had stepped closer, holding out the letter with shaking hands. Up close, Newell could see the dirt streaked across his cheeks, the hollow look in his dark eyes. For just a moment, one heartbeat, maybe 2, something flickered in Newell's chest. A memory of another boy, another letter, another plea for help that had gone unheard. But the moment passed. The investors were waiting. The deal wouldn't close itself. Time was money, and money was everything. Newell looked down at the boy and laughed. Not a cruel laugh, exactly. Not intentionally harsh. Just dismissive. Automatic. The kind of laugh that said, "This isn't my world, and you're not my problem. Kid, I don't know what you think this is, but I'm not running a charity here." The boy's eyes widened. He took a step back, but didn't lower the letter. "Sir, please. My mama, she's real sick. I heard you help people." You heard wrong." Newell was already walking away, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble entrance. "Find someone else to bother." The security guard moved toward the boy, but Newell was already through the doors, already thinking about square footage and profit margins and the impressed looks on Japanese faces when they saw his quarterly projections. He didn't see the boy's shoulders slump. Didn't see the tears that mixed with the dirt on his cheeks. Didn't see him walk away, still clutching the letter, still believing that somewhere in this city of glass and steel, someone might care enough to read it. Newell rode the elevator to the 40th floor, straightened his tie, and walked into the conference room with his $1 million smile. Gentlemen, he said, extending his hand to the lead investor. So sorry to keep you waiting. Now, let me show you how we're going to change the city's skyline. And for the next 3 hours, that's exactly what he did. He was brilliant. Persuasive. Untouchable. He closed the deal with a handshake and a dinner invitation. The investors left with checkbooks open and dreams of American profits dancing in their heads. Nuel stood at his office window afterward, looking down at the city spreading out below him like a vast, glittering circuit board. Somewhere down there, people were struggling, suffering, calling out for help. But from 40 floors up, their voices couldn't reach him. And that, Nuel thought, was exactly how he preferred it. What would you have done in that moment? Picture yourself walking to an important meeting, running late, when a desperate child asks for help. Would you have stopped? Would you have listened? Let me know in the comments below, because sometimes, the choices we make in seconds can echo for lifetimes. That evening, Nuel's penthouse was empty in the way that only perfect homes can be. Leanne had left early for the Children's Hospital Charity Gala. Ironic, he would think later, but not that night. That night, she was just a vision in midnight blue, air-kissing his cheek before disappearing in a cloud of Chanel and good intentions. Don't wait up, she'd said, her voice already distant, already focused on cameras and conversations and the careful choreography of high society charity. These things go late, you know. Maris was at Emma's house for a sleepover, 16-year-old girls giggling over movies and secrets and dreams Nuel couldn't begin to understand. When he'd hugged her goodbye that morning, she'd felt smaller somehow, more fragile than the confident young woman she was becoming. Love you, Dad, she'd said, and for just a moment, he'd seen something in her eyes. Concern, maybe. Or disappointment. But then she was gone, and the moment with it. Now Nuel stood alone in his glass tower, nursing a scotch that cost more than most people's rent, watching the city lights flicker like stars fallen to earth. The Japanese deal was already paying dividends. His phone had buzzed all afternoon with congratulations, interview requests, partnership proposals. Forbes wanted a comment. The Wall Street Journal wanted a feature. Nuel Ashford, the boy from the trailer park, had done it again. So why did he feel so empty? The first call came at 10:17 p.m. The ringtone cut through the silence like a scream. Nuel glanced at the caller ID, Marcus Webb, his head of property management. Marcus never called this late unless something was very, very wrong. Nuel. Marcus's voice was tight, professional panic barely held in check. We've got a situation. The Riverside complex. There's been a fire. Nuel set down his scotch, his mind already shifting into crisis mode. How bad? Bad. 3rd and 4th floors are gone. Fire department still working on containment. No casualties reported yet, but, insurance? Covered, but that's not the issue. The cause, they're saying it might be electrical. That wiring we postponed updating last quarter? Nuel closed his eyes. He remembered the conversation. The recommendation to upgrade the electrical systems in the older buildings. The cost-benefit analysis that had pushed it to the next fiscal year. A few more months of risk to save a few $100,000 in expenses. How many units affected? 47 families displaced. We're looking at temporary housing, property loss claims, potential lawsuits if negligence, handle it, Nuel said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. Do whatever needs to be done. He hung up and poured another scotch. The second call came at 11:03 p.m. This time it was his lawyer, Patricia Chen. Patricia was the kind of attorney who charged $1,000 an hour and earned every penny. She didn't call at 11 p.m. to chat. Nuel, we have a problem. Maria Santos. Ring a bell? The name didn't, but then again, Nuel rarely bothered with individual tenant names. There were too many, and they changed too often. Should it? 73-year-old woman. Lives in the Eastbridge apartments. Fell down a staircase yesterday evening. Broken hip, head trauma. She's in intensive care. And? Patricia's pause was loaded with expensive legal implications. The railing was loose. Had been for months, according to witnesses. Multiple maintenance requests that were delayed. Another cost-cutting measure. Another line item pushed to the next quarter's budget. Another few thousand saved at the expense of someone else's safety. How bad is it legally? Bad. Her family's already talking to other attorneys. The media's starting to sniff around. And Nuel, there's video. Video? Security footage of the fall. It's graphic. If this goes viral, if it becomes a symbol of negligent landlords. Nuel didn't need her to finish. He could see the headlines already. The perfect storm of a burned building and a broken old woman, tied together by his name and his negligence. Fix it, he said. Pay them. Make it go away. I'm trying, but. Then try harder. He hung up and poured a third scotch. The third call came at 12:41 a.m. By then, Nuel was past pretending this was just another difficult night. The city lights below seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, and every shadow looked like an accusation. Mr. Ashford? The voice was unfamiliar, professional, tired. This is Detective Sarah Reeves with Metro PD. I need to ask you a few questions. Police. The word hit Nuel like a physical blow. About what? A missing child. 9-year-old boy named Miguel Santos. He was last seen near your office building earlier today. Witnesses say he tried to approach you. Miguel Santos. The name crashed into Nuel's consciousness like a wrecking ball. Santos. Like Maria Santos, the woman who'd fallen down his stairs. Like the boy with the letter, the desperate eyes, the bare feet. I don't know anything about a missing child. Mr. Ashford, we have security footage showing the boy near your building. We have witnesses who saw him try to talk to you. What we need to know is what he said, and what you might know about where he went afterward. Nuel's hand shook as he raised the scotch to his lips. The boy. The letter. The laugh that had dismissed a child's desperate plea. I need to speak to my attorney. Sir, this is just preliminary questioning. A child is missing. If you have any information that might help us find him, I said I need to speak to my attorney. The line went quiet for a moment. When Detective Reeves spoke again, her voice was colder. Mr. Ashford, I strongly encourage you to cooperate with this investigation. A child's life may be at stake. Nuel hung up. His hands were shaking now, really shaking. He tried to call Leanne, but it went straight to voicemail, probably silenced for the gala. He tried Maris, same result. For the first time in decades, Nuel Ashford felt truly alone. He stood at his window, looking down at the city that had made him rich and powerful and empty, and tried to remember the boy's face. Had he looked hungry? Scared? Desperate? Had he looked like Nuel himself, all those years ago? The phone rang again. And again. Reporters, now. The story was leaking. Fire. Negligence. Missing child. His name connecting all of it like a thread through a tapestry of consequences. By 3 a.m., his stock had started falling on overseas markets. By 4 a.m., his investors were calling emergency meetings. By sunrise, his empire was crumbling. But none of it mattered. Because at 6:17 a.m., Detective Reeves called back. And she told him about the letter. Mr. Ashford, we found the boy. 5 words that changed everything. Nuel stood in his kitchen, coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips, watching the sunrise paint his penthouse in shades of gold and blood. Where is he? The question came out as a whisper. Detective Reeves's voice was carefully professional, but Nuel could hear the exhaustion underneath. And something else. Something that sounded like contained rage. He's dead, Mr. Ashford. The coffee mug slipped from Newell's hand, shattering against the Italian marble floor. The sound echoed through the empty penthouse like a gunshot. We found his body in an alley 2 blocks from your office. Preliminary examination suggests exposure. He'd been there for hours. Newell slumped against the kitchen counter, his legs suddenly unable to support him. I don't understand. Miguel Santos. 9 years old. Son of Maria Santos, the woman who fell in your apartment building. The woman currently in intensive care because of that broken railing you chose not to fix. The words hit Newell like physical blows. Each revelation was another crack in the foundation of his carefully constructed world. Miguel was trying to get help for his mother. She'd been sick for weeks, infection from an untreated wound. They couldn't afford proper medical care, couldn't afford the antibiotics she needed. They lived in Unit 4C of the Eastbridge Apartments. Your building, Mr. Ashford. Your responsibility. Newell closed his eyes, but he couldn't shut out the detective's voice. The boy spent days asking neighbors, local business owners, anyone who might help. Someone told him that successful businessmen sometimes helped people in need. Someone told him about the man in the glass tower who'd made it out of poverty himself. Stop, Newell whispered. He wrote you a letter, Mr. Ashford. We found it still clutched in his hand. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. I'm going to read it to you now. Please don't, dear sir, Detective Reeves began, her voice steady but sharp as a blade. My name is Miguel Santos. I am 9 years old. I am writing to ask for your help. Newell slid down the kitchen cabinet until he was sitting on the floor, surrounded by shards of broken ceramic and spreading coffee. My mama is very sick. She has been sick for a long time, but we don't have money for the doctor. She tries to hide it, but I know she is scared. I am scared too because I don't want to be alone. The words were read in Detective Reeves's clipped professional tone, but Newell could hear the child's voice underneath. Careful handwriting. Hope struggling against desperation. I heard that you help people. I heard that you came from nothing too and that you understand what it's like to be scared and poor. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is. Newell's mother's face flashed in his mind. Sarah Ashford, hands raw from scrubbing other people's floors, whispering, You're gonna be different. You're gonna help people. I am not asking for much. Just enough for Mama's medicine. I will do anything to pay you back. I will work for free. I will clean your building. I will do whatever you need. I just want my mama to get better. Tears were running down Newell's face now, hot and unstoppable. If you can't help us, I understand. But if you can, we live at 1247 Eastbridge Apartments, Unit 4C. Mama's name is Maria Santos. My name is Miguel. Please, sir. I just don't want to be alone. The detective paused, letting the weight of the words settle. He signed it, your friend, Miguel. And then he drew a little heart. Newell made a sound that might have been a sob or might have been the sound of a soul breaking. Mr. Ashford, are you there? Yes, he whispered. Miguel spent his last day trying to deliver that letter. Security footage shows him waiting outside your building for hours. He approached several of your employees, but they all turned him away. Finally, he saw you. Newell remembered. The small figure at the gates. The desperate voice. The laugh that had dismissed a dying child's last hope. He followed you for 3 blocks after you rejected him. Witnesses say he was crying. He spent the night in that alley, probably hoping you'd come back. Hoping you'd change your mind. I didn't know, Newell said, but the words sounded pathetic even to him. Didn't know what, Mr. Ashford? Didn't know that poverty exists? Didn't know that children suffer? The anger in the detective's voice was barely controlled now. Or didn't know that your choices have consequences? That cutting maintenance budgets means people get hurt? That ignoring desperate children means they die alone in alleys? Newell was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook his entire body. Miguel Santos died believing that somewhere in this city, someone cared enough to help. He died holding on to hope that you, the man who'd escaped poverty, who understood struggle, might show mercy. Detective Reeves paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was quiet but lethal. He died wrong, didn't he, Mr. Ashford? The line went dead. Nuel sat on his kitchen floor, surrounded by the debris of his morning and the wreckage of his soul, and read the letter again and again until the words burned themselves into his memory. Your friend, Miguel. The little heart, drawn in careful strokes by a hand that would never write again. Outside his window, the city continued its relentless hum. Cars and construction and a million people going about their lives, unaware that in a penthouse 40 floors above them, a man was finally learning the true cost of success. Nuel Ashford had built an empire on the rule that nothing was personal. But this? This was as personal as it gets. Sometimes the smallest choices carry the heaviest consequences. If you believe in karma, in the idea that what we put into the world comes back to us, share this story. Because every choice we make echoes, and every heart we ignore carries a name, a story, a life that matters. The story broke at 7:43 a.m. Channel 7 News led with it, businessman ignores dying child's plea for help. By 8:15, it was trending on social media. By 9:30, it had gone national. The security footage was grainy but damning. Miguel Santos, small and desperate, approaching the man in the expensive suit. The letter held out like an offering. The laugh. The dismissal. The child walking away, shoulders slumped in defeat. Someone had synced it with audio from a nearby business's surveillance system. You could hear Miguel's voice, small and pleading, please, sir, it's for my mother. You could hear Nuel's response, find someone else to bother. By noon, it had been viewed 2 million times. The media painted Nuel exactly as he'd feared. Heartless tycoon. The man who laughed at a dying child. Poverty to penthouse, how success killed his soul. They dug up everything. The trailer park childhood that should have made him compassionate. The mother who'd sacrificed everything for his education. The pattern of negligence in his properties, deferred maintenance, ignored complaints, profits over people. They interviewed tenants who'd begged for repairs. Former employees who'd witnessed his coldness. Business rivals who spoke of his ruthless tactics with barely concealed satisfaction. He's always been like this, said James Morrison, a former contractor. He'd cut corners on everything. Safety regulations, building codes, basic human decency. As long as the money kept coming in, nothing else mattered. The lawsuits started immediately. Miguel's family, his grandmother, his uncles, cousins who'd loved a little boy with big dreams and careful handwriting, filed wrongful death suits. Their lawyer called it criminal negligence resulting in death. Maria Santos, Miguel's mother, survived her surgery but remained in critical condition. Her medical bills were mounting, and now the family faced funeral costs too. A GoFundMe page raised $200,000 in 6 hours. The city launched an investigation into all of Ashford Holdings' properties. Building inspectors who'd been bought off for years suddenly found their consciences. Violations that had been overlooked were documented. Bribes that had been accepted were revealed. The fire at Riverside Complex was ruled arson, but the negligent electrical systems had made it worse than it should have been. 47 families were homeless, and their lawyers were circling like sharks. Maria Santos's fall was ruled preventable negligence. The broken railing had been reported 16 times in 4 months. Each report had been filed and ignored. By the end of the first week, Nuel was facing 17 separate lawsuits totaling $47 million in damages. His investors pulled out. The Japanese deal collapsed when footage surfaced of Nuel dismissing Miguel just hours before closing the biggest contract of his career. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. How can we partner with a man who profits from human suffering? The lead investor told reporters through a translator. This is not the American dream. This is the American nightmare. Ashford Holdings stock price plummeted. What had been worth $200 per share on Tuesday was worth $23 by Friday. But the financial destruction was nothing compared to what happened at home. Leanne found out from the news. She was at the charity gala when someone showed her the video on their phone. Nuel's wife, who'd spent 5 years raising money for underprivileged children, watched her husband laugh at a desperate child's plea for help. She left the gala immediately. Nuel was in his study when she came home, staring at the letter that had been released to the media. Your friend, Miguel, had become a hashtag. The little heart was printed on protest signs. Is it true? Leanne stood in the doorway, still wearing her midnight blue gown, but her careful makeup was streaked with tears. Nuel looked up at his wife, beautiful, kind Leanne who'd believed in the man she thought she'd married. Yes, he said simply. She stared at him for a long moment, as if seeing him for the first time. There was a 9-year-old boy tonight at the gala, she said quietly. Jeremy Martinez. Leukemia survivor. He played violin for the donors. Nuel said nothing. He reminded me of Miguel. Same age. Same hopeful eyes. Her voice broke. I sat there watching him play. Thinking about how proud his mother must be. How grateful she must be that someone helped save her son's life. Leanne, and then I remembered that my husband, the man I sleep next to every night, let another mother's son die in an alley rather than take 2 minutes to read a letter. The words hung between them like a chasm. I can't do this anymore, Nuel. I can't be married to someone who could look at a dying child and laugh. She was gone by morning. She took Maris with her. The note she left was brief, I'm staying at my sister's. Maris needs time to process what her father has become. Don't contact us until you figure out how to become the man we thought you were. Maris didn't leave a note. But her absence was the loudest silence Nuel had ever heard. Within 2 weeks, divorce papers were filed. Within a month, Leanne had moved across the country to her sister's house in Portland. She took nothing but her clothes and their daughter. I don't want his money, she told her lawyer. I don't want anything that came from his profits. The media loved that angle. Even his wife won't touch blood money. Nuel fought the lawsuits as long as he could, but the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage. Documented negligence. A pattern of callous disregard for human life in pursuit of profit. His legal bills consumed what the stock collapse hadn't taken. His properties were seized to pay judgments. His penthouse was sold to cover debts. Ashford Holdings, the empire he'd built over 2 decades, ceased to exist on a Tuesday morning in October. The corporate dissolution papers were filed at 9:15 a.m. By lunch, the signs were being taken down from his buildings. Nuel Ashford, who'd once commanded boardrooms and reshaped skylines, was bankrupt by Christmas. But bankruptcy was just numbers on paper. The real loss was the letter he carried with him everywhere, folded and refolded until the paper was soft as tissue. Your friend, Miguel. Every night, he read it before he went to sleep in whatever cheap motel or homeless shelter would take him. Every morning, he woke up knowing that somewhere in this city, a little boy had died believing that someone like Nuel Ashford might care enough to help. He'd been wrong. And now Nuel had to figure out how to live with that truth. 6 months after Miguel Santos died in an alley, Nuel Ashford was serving soup to homeless veterans in a downtown shelter. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man who'd once refused to help a dying child now ladled mac and cheese onto plastic trays for men who'd sacrificed everything for their country and gotten nothing but indifference in return. His apartment was 8 blocks away, if you could call it an apartment. A studio room above a check-cashing place, with a hot plate and a mattress on the floor. The shower down the hall worked sometimes. The heat worked less often. It cost $400 a month, and some nights Nuel lay awake wondering how he'd pay it. He worked construction when he could get it. Day labor at $12 an hour, cash under the table, no questions asked. His hands, once soft from executive life, were now cracked and scarred from concrete and rebar. His back ached constantly. His knees protested every flight of stairs. At 47, Nuel felt 70. But he was alive. Miguel Santos was not. The thought followed him everywhere. When he walked past the alley where the boy had died, now marked with a small memorial garden maintained by the neighborhood, Miguel's ghost whispered accusations. When he saw children on the street, he wondered if they were hungry, scared, desperate for help their parents couldn't provide. He tried to contact Miguel's family through their lawyer. Tried to apologize, to offer what little money he had left, to somehow make amends. "My clients don't want your apology," the lawyer had said. "They want you to disappear." So he had. Nuel volunteered at the shelter because it was the only place that would take him. Pastor Williams, who ran the operation, had recognized him immediately but offered no judgment. "We all got ghosts," the old man had said. "Question is what you plan to do about yours." What Nuel did was work. He served food, cleaned bathrooms, sorted donated clothes. He listened to stories from men who'd lost everything to war, addiction, mental illness, bad luck, or simple human cruelty. Their stories weren't so different from his own. "Used to have a house in the suburbs," said Tommy, a Vietnam vet with shaking hands and hollow eyes. "Wife, 2 kids, good job at the plant." Then the flashback started. Started drinking to make them stop. Wife left. Lost the job. Lost the house. Been on the streets for 15 years now. "You miss it?" Nuel asked, refilling Tommy's coffee cup. "Every day. But missing ain't the same as deserving. I made my choices. Just like you made yours." Tommy knew Nuel's story. They all did. But here, among the forgotten and discarded, past sins were less important than present actions. "Difference is," Tommy continued, "you still got time to make different choices." One night in February, as Nuel was cleaning up after dinner service, Pastor Williams approached him. "Got someone wants to meet you," the pastor said. Nuel looked up to see a small figure hovering near the kitchen entrance. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, with enormous brown eyes and a shy smile. She wore a pink coat that was too big for her and clutched a worn stuffed rabbit. "Are you the man who helps people?" she asked in a voice so quiet Nuel had to lean down to hear her. The question hit him like a physical blow. Miguel's words, spoken through another child's lips. For a moment, Nuel couldn't breathe. What? My mama said there's a man here who helps people." "Are you him?" Pastor Williams cleared his throat. "This is Isabella. Her mother's been coming here for meals. She's having some troubles." Nuel knelt down so he was at the girl's eye level. She looked so much like Miguel might have looked if he'd lived to see 8. The same dark eyes, the same desperate hope. "What kind of help does your mama need?" he asked gently. "She's sick," Isabella whispered. "Really sick. But we don't got money for the doctor." The words were like an echo from beyond the grave. Another sick mother. Another desperate child. Another chance to choose differently. Nuel's throat tightened. "Where is your mama now?" "Outside. She's scared to come in. She thinks people will judge her." "Can you bring her to me?" Isabella nodded and scurried away. A few minutes later, she returned holding the hand of a woman who couldn't have been more than 25 but looked 40. She was thin, pale, with the hollow-eyed look of someone who'd been fighting illness without adequate care. "Ma'am," Nuel said, standing up. "My name is Nuel. Your daughter says you need help." The woman, Rosa, she said, was hesitant at first. But when Isabella nodded encouragingly, she began to talk. Diabetes. No insurance. Couldn't afford insulin. Working 2 jobs but still barely making rent. Had been rationing her medication for weeks, trying to make it last. "I know what that means," she said quietly. "I know what happens when you can't afford to live. But I got Isabella to think about. I got to try." Nuel listened to her story and saw himself at 9 years old, watching his mother make the same impossible choices. Work or sleep? Medicine or food? Pride or survival? Can you take us to a hospital? He asked. Rosa shook her head. Can't afford the emergency room. They'll just tell me what I already know and send me a bill I can't pay. Let me worry about the bill. I can't ask you to, you're not asking. I'm offering. That night, Nuel spent the last $347 in his checking account to get Rosa the care she needed. He sat in the emergency room waiting area with Isabella, reading her stories from magazines while her mother got 4 fluids and insulin and a prescription for medication she could actually afford to fill. Is my mama gonna be okay? Isabella asked, curled up against Nuel's side. Yes, he said, and meant it. Your mama's going to be fine. When Rosa was released 3 hours later, she was already looking better. Color in her cheeks, strength in her voice. I don't know how to thank you, she said, tears in her eyes. You don't need to thank me, Nuel replied. Just, take care of each other, okay? As they walked out of the hospital together, Isabella slipped her small hand into Nuel's. Are you an angel? She asked. Nuel looked down at this beautiful, trusting child who saw goodness where others saw only failure. No, sweetheart. I'm just a man trying to figure out how to be better. That night, alone in his tiny apartment, Nuel pulled out Miguel's letter one more time. But for the first time in months, when he read the words "your friend, Miguel," he didn't feel only shame. He felt something else. Something that might have been hope. The letter from Maris arrived on a Tuesday morning in spring. Nuel was getting ready for his shift at the community center. He'd graduated from serving meals to helping with job placement programs, when he saw the familiar handwriting on the envelope slipped under his door. His daughter's handwriting had matured over the past year. The careful loops and curves spoke of someone becoming an adult, someone learning to navigate a world more complicated than private school and violin lessons. For a moment, he was afraid to open it. The last communication he'd received from his family had been divorce papers. Final decree. Assets distributed. Custody awarded to mother. He'd signed everything without contest, his lawyer's pen feeling like a scalpel cutting away the last connections to his former life. But this envelope was addressed to him in Maris's careful script. And in the corner, she'd drawn a small heart. Just like Miguel. Dear Dad, I know it's been a long time since we talked. Mom says I should wait, that you need more time to figure things out. But I've been thinking about you every day, and I couldn't wait anymore. I saw the news about the community center. About the program you started for families who can't afford medical care. About the scholarship fund you set up in Miguel's name. I know you don't have much money now. I know you gave away what you had left to help people. Mom explained everything to me. I want you to know that I understand why you did what you did. Not with Miguel, I'll never understand that. But I understand why you're trying to help now. Why you're giving everything you can to people who need it. I'm proud of you, Dad. I know that probably sounds weird, being proud of someone who lost everything. But I remember the man you used to be. Always busy, always working, always worried about money and deals and impressing people who didn't really matter. You seem different now. In the pictures I've seen, in the interviews you've done with the local paper. You look sadder, but also more real. Like you're finally the person you were supposed to be all along. I miss you. I know I can't see you yet. Mom's not ready, and I have to respect that. But I wanted you to know that I still love you. I love who you're becoming. Can you write me back? I'd like to hear about your work, about the people you're helping. I'd like to know that you're okay. Love, Maris. P.S. I'm graduating next month. Valedictorian. I'm going to study social work in college. I think you'd be proud of that choice. Nuel read the letter 3 times before his vision cleared enough to see the words properly. His daughter was proud of him. Not of his money or his empire or his success. Of his failures. Of his attempts to rebuild from nothing. Of his decision to give rather than take. She was going to study social work. She was going to spend her life helping people. Despite everything he'd done wrong. Somehow he'd raised a daughter who wanted to make the world better. That afternoon, instead of going to the community center, Nuel walked to the memorial garden where Miguel Santos had died. The neighborhood had transformed it into something beautiful: flowers and trees, a small code playground, benches where families could sit and remember. There was a plaque with Miguel's picture. 9 years old, smiling, holding the letter he'd written with such careful hope. Your friend, Miguel. I got a letter today, Nuel said quietly, kneeling beside the memorial. From my daughter. She says she's proud of me. A breeze stirred the flowers, carrying the scent of jasmine and new growth. I don't know if I deserve that. I don't know if I'll ever deserve forgiveness for what I did to you. But I want you to know that I've been trying. Every day, I've been trying to be the man you thought I could be. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, not Miguel's letter this time, but a new one. A letter he'd written to the Miguel Santos Foundation, pledging the last of his savings to their scholarship fund for underprivileged children. I can't bring you back, he whispered. I can't change what I did. But maybe I can make sure other children like you get the help they need. Maybe I can be the person they come to when they're scared and desperate and alone. That evening, Nuel wrote back to Maris. Dear sweetheart, getting your letter was the best thing that's happened to me in a very long time. Knowing that you're proud of me, knowing that you still love me despite everything, means more than you could possibly understand. You asked about my work. I want to tell you about Rosa and Isabella, who I met at the shelter. Isabella was 8 years old when she asked if I was the man who helps people. Her mother was dying of diabetes because they couldn't afford insulin. I was able to help them. Not because I'm rich, I'm not, anymore. But because I finally understood what it means to put someone else's need before your own convenience. That night, helping Isabella and her mother was the first time since Miguel died that I felt like I might be worth something again. I want to tell you about the community center, where I help people find jobs and housing and medical care. About the families who come in desperate and leave with hope. About the children who remind me every day why kindness matters. I want to tell you about Miguel Santos, whose memorial garden I visit every week. Whose letter I still carry with me. Whose death taught me that every choice we make echoes in ways we can't imagine. But mostly, I want to tell you how proud I am of you. Social work. Helping people. Making the world better. You're going to do incredible things, Maris. You're going to be the person I should have been all along. I love you. I miss you. And I'm working every day to become someone worthy of being your father again. If your mother is ever ready, if you're ever ready, I would love to see you. Even for just a few minutes. Even just to hug you and tell you in person how proud I am. Until then, know that you are the best thing I ever did. The one choice I got right. All my love, Dad. P.S. Congratulations on valedictorian. I always knew you were the smartest person in any room. The letters continued throughout the summer. Maris wrote about college preparation, her thoughts on social justice, her plans to work with at-risk youth. Nuel wrote about his community work, the families he'd helped, the slow process of rebuilding not just his life but his soul. In August, Maris sent a graduation photo. Beautiful and confident in her cap and gown, but with something gentle in her eyes that reminded Nuel of his mother. In September, she started college. Her first letter from the dorm began, Dear Dad, I told my roommate about you today. About who you were, and who you are now. She said you sound like someone she'd like to meet. In October, Leanne wrote for the first time. Nuel, Maris has been sharing your letters with me. I hope you don't mind. I needed to see for myself that the changes were real. I'm not ready to see you yet. I may never be ready. What you did, what you chose not to do, broke something in me that I'm still trying to heal. But I can see that you're trying. The community center work, the scholarship fund, the way you're living now. It's not enough to erase what happened, but it's something. Maris wants to see you for Christmas. Just for a few hours. I'm not comfortable with that yet, but I'm considering it. I need you to understand something. If we do this, it's not about forgiveness. It's not about getting our family back. It's about giving our daughter a chance to have a relationship with the man you're becoming, separate from the man you were. Can you live with that? Leanne. Newell wrote back the same day. Leanne, yes. I can live with that. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable. But if you'll let me see Maris, if you'll give me a chance to be part of her life in whatever small way you're comfortable with, I'll be grateful for that gift every day. I know I can't be her father the way I was before. That man failed her, failed you, failed everyone who mattered. But maybe I can be something better. Someone who shows her that it's possible to come back from terrible mistakes. Someone who proves that change is real, even when it comes too late. Thank you for considering this. Thank you for raising our daughter to be someone who believes in second chances. I'll wait for your decision. Newell. 3 weeks later, the answer came. Christmas Eve. 2 p.m. The coffee shop on Pine Street near the college. 1 hour. Don't disappoint her again. Newell read the note a dozen times, his hands shaking with gratitude and terror. He was going to see his daughter. He was going to have a chance, just one chance. To show her that the man who'd dismissed a dying child had learned to love again. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was hope. And sometimes, hope is enough to build a life on. Christmas Eve came wrapped in snow and silence. Newell arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, his hands shaking as he ordered coffee he wouldn't drink. He'd changed clothes 3 times that morning, finally settling on the only decent shirt he owned, blue flannel, clean but worn at the elbows. He looked nothing like the man who'd once commanded boardrooms. And that, he thought, was probably for the best. At exactly 2 p.m., the door chimed, and Maris walked in. 18 years old now. Beautiful like her mother, but with something stronger in her face. Something that spoke of someone who'd seen the world clearly and chosen to engage with it anyway. She saw him immediately and smiled, not the practiced social smile he remembered from family dinners, but something real and warm and slightly nervous. Dad? He stood up, uncertain whether to hug her or shake her hand or just stand there drowning in the reality of seeing his daughter again. She made the choice for him, crossing the space between them and wrapping her arms around his waist. For a moment, Newell forgot how to breathe. She smelled like coffee and winter air and the lavender soap she'd used since middle school. She felt smaller than he remembered, but stronger too. I missed you, she whispered against his chest. I missed you too, sweetheart. So much. They sat across from each other at a small table by the window, and for the first few minutes, they just looked at each other. You look different, Maris said finally. Older? Sadder. But also. I don't know. More real, maybe? Newell nodded. I feel more real. Like I'm finally awake after sleepwalking for 20 years. Tell me about your work, she said. Really tell me. Not the sanitized version from your letters. So he did. He told her about Rosa and Isabella, about the night he'd spent his last $300 on medical care for strangers and felt richer than he ever had in his penthouse. He told her about the community center, about helping people find jobs and housing and dignity. About the families who came in desperate and left with hope. He told her about Miguel Santos, about the letter he still carried, about the memorial garden where he went to remember that every choice echoes. I can't bring him back, Newell said quietly. I can't change what I did. But I can make sure that every child who comes to me for help gets the attention Miguel deserved. I can be the person he thought I could be. Maris listened without judgment, asking questions that showed she understood not just what he was saying, but why it mattered. Do you forgive yourself? She asked finally. Newell considered the question. No. I don't think I ever will. But I've learned that forgiveness isn't always the point. Sometimes the point is just trying to do better. Trying to be better. Every day. Mom doesn't know if she'll ever forgive you either. I know. And I understand that. What I did, it changed how she sees me. How she sees the world. I can't ask her to get over that just because I've finally learned to be human. But you want her to? I want her to be happy. If that's with me, someday, when she's ready, then yes, I'd be grateful for that gift. But if it's not, if she's happier without me, then I want that for her too. Mara smiled, the first completely unguarded smile he'd seen from her. You really have changed, haven't you? I'm trying to. Every day. They talked for 2 hours instead of 1. About her college classes, her plans to work with at-risk youth, her boyfriend who wanted to meet the father she'd described as complicated but trying. They talked about Christmas, about the small tree Nuel had put up in his studio apartment, the first Christmas tree he'd had since leaving the penthouse. I got you something, Maris said, pulling a small wrapped package from her purse. Inside was a photograph in a simple frame. Nuel and Maris at her 8th birthday party, both of them laughing at something off camera. He was pushing her higher on a swing set, and she was reaching toward the sky like she could touch the clouds. I found it in Mom's photo albums. She said I could have it. Nuel stared at the photo, remembering that day. One of the few times he'd put work aside completely, focusing only on his daughter's joy. Look at us, he whispered. You were a good dad sometimes, Maris said gently. Not always. Not at the end. But sometimes, you were exactly the father I needed. I want to be that again. Not the same, I can't be the same. But I want to be someone you can be proud of. You already are, Dad. You already are. When it was time to leave, they hugged again, longer this time, without the uncertainty of reunion. Can I see you again? Nuel asked. Maybe when you're home for spring break? I'd like that. And Dad? Maybe next time you can show me the community center. I'd like to meet some of the people you've helped. I'd love that. As Maris walked away, snow beginning to fall more heavily, she turned back. Dad? Miguel would be proud of you too. The boy who wrote that letter, he believed you could be better. And he was right. That night, alone in his small apartment, Nuel sat by his tiny Christmas tree and read Miguel's letter one more time. Dear Sir. I heard that you help people. I heard that you came from nothing too and that you understand what it's like to be scared and poor. I don't know if that's true, but I hope it is. For the first time since reading those words, Nuel smiled. It is now, Miguel, he whispered. It's true now. He pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. Dear Miguel, I know you can't read this. I know it's too late for letters between us. But I wanted to tell you something. You were right about me. Not about who I was when you needed me, I failed you then. And I'll carry that failure forever. But you were right about who I could become. Today I saw my daughter for the first time in over a year. She told me she's proud of me. She told me you would be proud of me too. I think you'd like the work I'm doing now. Helping families like yours. Making sure children like you don't have to die alone in alleys, believing that no one cares. I think you'd like the memorial garden the neighborhood built where you died. There are flowers there now, and a code playground where children laugh. Your picture is there, smiling, holding the letter that changed everything. I visit you there sometimes. I tell you about the people I've helped, the families I've saved, the children who got the help you deserved. I can't bring you back. I can't change what I did. But I can make sure your death meant something. I can make sure that every time someone needs help, they find someone who remembers a little boy named Miguel Santos, who believed in the possibility of kindness even when the world gave him no reason to. Thank you for teaching me that the smallest choices carry the heaviest truths. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to become the person someone believes you can be. Your friend, Nuel. He folded the letter carefully and placed it next to Miguel's in his wallet. 2 letters. One from a child who died believing in redemption. One to that same child, proving that his faith had not been misplaced. Outside his window, the city hummed with Christmas Eve energy. Families gathering, children dreaming, people choosing every moment whether to help or hurt, to open their hearts or close them to the world's need. Newell Ashford had learned, finally and forever, that every choice echoes. That every act of kindness counts. That the smallest moment can change everything. He'd learned it too late to save Miguel Santos. But not too late to save everyone who came after. And in the end, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Have you ever walked past someone in need, only to later wonder if that moment could have changed everything? Newell Ashford built an empire by ignoring the voices of those who needed help. It took losing everything, his business, his family, his fortune, to learn that the richest life is one spent lifting others up. Miguel Santos died believing that somewhere in this world, someone cared enough to help. His death taught a powerful man that wealth without compassion is worthless, that success without humanity is failure, that it's never too late to choose kindness over convenience. Every day, we all face moments like Newell's. Someone asks for help. Someone needs what we have. Someone believes we might be better than we've shown ourselves to be. What will you choose? The child on the street corner. The coworker struggling in silence. The neighbor who needs a hand but is too proud to ask. Every act of kindness counts. Every moment of compassion echoes. Every choice to help instead of hurt changes the world in ways we may never know. Because sometimes, the smallest choice is the one that changes everything. Like this video if you know every act of kindness counts. Comment with "I won't walk past again" if this story touched your heart. Subscribe to Mr. Nuel Stories, because each day brings a new story that just might change the way you see the world. And remember, you never know when someone's hoping you'll be the person who helps. You never know when your kindness might be someone's last hope. Don't let them hope in vain. Be the person Miguel believed Newell could become. Be the person someone is praying you'll choose to be. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of person who believes that stories like this matter. Because they do. And so do you.